set auto-destruct sequence.
It's the time allotted that concerns me.
Recognize Picard, Jean-Luc, Captain. Recognize Riker, William T., Commander.
Maximum warp!
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Warp Core Podcast. It is I, UrzaMaster. Joining me as always, we've got Lord Uther, and from the Great Q Continuum, Fert Derby. Gentlemen, welcome back. We are cracking into more TNG today, but for all you listeners out there in pending rebrand, whether you're a subscriber or new to us and need to subscribe, which you should click that button right now, hit that notification, because coming up next week, we will be going over Strange New Worlds. Or, potentially that episode might already be out there. That's your surprise. Go to our archives and take a look. If you are watching Strange New Worlds Season 3, really excited about that. But today we're talking TNG. We are going back to the home soil of the next generation of Star Trek. Gentlemen, this episode almost had me thinking it was a different episode when I was watching it. So if that says anything about the next generation of Star Trek, it should say a lot about this episode. But Fert Derby, tell me a little bit more about what's going on in home soil.
Thank you, Warp Core enthusiasts and my bridge crew members. We are on episode 17, season 1, Star Trek The Next Generation, Home Soil. First aired on February 22nd, 1988. And following this episode, TNG took a brief siesta and then would resume first-run episodes in mid-March of 88. So this is sort of a stopping point for a few weeks, cleanse the palate, clear the air, and get ready for the stretch run of Season 1. Our director is Corey Allen. This is his second episode. He did the pilot, Encounter at Farpoint, and we talked about that here on the Warp Core podcast in episode 90. You don't have to go too far back to catch our viewpoints on Mr. Allen and how he handled the inaugural mission of the Enterprise D. Check our archives. Go back and listen. Did we like Corey Allen? Did we think Corey Allen was meh? You'll find out in Warp Core 90. He did a total of 5 Next Generation episodes overall, so this would be number 2. The story was by Carl Goers and Ralph Sanchez and Robert Sabernoff. The teleplay was by Robert Sabernoff, so it was a trio of writers who cooked up this tale, and only one of them received final teleplay credit. That was Mr. Sabernoff. There were issues with the script, numerous rewrites. There were issues with casting. There was issues with sets. There was issues with scheduling. This is one of those episodes that behind the scenes, they're kind of fortunate they got 47 minutes on the air to begin with. The actor who played the terraformer Kurt Mandel, his name was Walter Gotell. And eagle-eyed James Bond fans will remember him. He appeared off and on in the franchise as the Soviet General Gogol. And I think he appeared as far back as some Sean Connerys and went all the way through the Timothy Daltons. General Gogol was Kurt Mandel, had a distinguished tone about him, played a great Soviet character actor. And a phrase that I think if we ever settle on a pending rebrand, this should be our pending rebrand. This episode introduced us to ugly bags of mostly water, which I think would be a dynamite alternative name for this studio.
Look, I think that's just like, if there was a way to encapsulate this episode in one phrase, ugly bags of mostly water is like top draw. For
Yes.
all the writing problems this episode I had, or that I had with, or that the writers had with, my goodness, is that not gold? Lord, what do you think about that? Like, bags of mostly water? Are we ugly bags of mostly water?
I mean, it's bags of lots of things, but yes, I'll say water right now because we are a family-friendly podcast. So,
I think Lord Uther, off of the beaten broadcast path, I think he mentioned it, and it's kind of where my jumping off point for you gentlemen was. It's really a missed opportunity in this show, which is coming again after the first 4 Star Trek big screen features. We have not yet had Final Frontier, Undiscovered Country. We'll talk about that, where they show up in the firmament later. But we've had our Star Trek motion picture. We've had Wrath of Khan, Search for Spock, Voyage Home. And this was a missed opportunity with terraforming to start layering in things from, let's say, lessons learned or crises averted back in the past. And I think it was Lord Uther who said, I was missing the whole Project Genesis sort of labeling, branding, if you will. And I don't know if it's because Starfleet just said, forget it, we're not talking about Project Genesis, do not bring up Project Genesis, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, in essence, it is the same thing. Take a dead planet, make it live, make it live again, and please don't have any existing life forms on the planet when you do so, which is the crux, the philosophical and narrative crux of this episode. Gentlemen, we'll get into warp cores at the end. My feeling on this was that they were trying to go for hard science. They really wanted something that sounded well researched. They wanted to hit you with data, teehee. And they also wanted to combine that with sort of a tense locked room murder mystery, et cetera, et cetera. But there were a lot of narrative tunnels that they were burrowing in. And I think overall, that may color our impressions of it. How did you find the soil, Lord Uther?
Well, speaking of tunnels, to me, this episode was Devil in the Dark, is what it was, right? So
Okay.
instead of kind of going backwards with that TOS reference, I like the idea of you could have, without, and we talk about this a lot, right? Without using cheese, you could have easily referenced Project Genesis in any way, shape, or form. Could have done a reference to Section 31 if you wanted to, and even made it kind of like a secretive thing in a sense. Maybe they did wind up hiding it somehow, but there's some kind of a reference, and I think you could have played into that. I think it would have made the episode maybe flow a little bit better, or at least allowed us to connect with it, because, and we've had this discussion before too about they, and I get it to a point. They're trying to link back to something, and let's remember the time reference here. They're trying to link back to TOS, in my opinion, to get those people on board. And I think they write some of these episodes that lean towards that. And you probably even have writers or people that were part of TOS that are influencing Next Gen at this point too. So again, could have used a little bit different of a story or a way to go with it instead of going with this Devil in the Dark, because that's really all this was, just kind of changing the entities or the life forms around, in my opinion. But Urza, take it away.
You didn't even get a McCoy saving him with concrete. Yeah, Devil in the Dark was the first thing that came to mind for me, but I didn't mind it. I love a rehash of a TOS episode that they're able to expand upon a little bit. I think they were successful in that here. Methinks Roddenberry probably had some influence behind the scenes on this, and that's why. Like, hey, we've done this before, let's do this and that and the other, let's make it inorganic, because I think that's one suggestion that Star Trek makes a lot, is that there's a lot of life out there we just don't understand. And that's something that I like that they dive into, because it's very possible there's inorganic life in the universe. We don't know. Which is kind of the beauty of that and the beauty of Star Trek. I would probably have said it would have been cool to get a Project Genesis nod here. Like, oh, ever since Project Genesis failed, this is how we terraform. Even a throwaway line like that would have been great. But now that we've had Picard, I can reflect on that and go, oh, Section 31 ate up all the Genesis files because they've got Genesis 2 sitting in their back pocket in their locker room, along with Kirk's body and a mutated Tribble and all these other things. So there is a bit of a payoff. Like, I feel like that's what Picard did really well in season 3, was they took those little niblets that we wanted in TNG and never got, and gave it all to us in one season, which is nice, because every rewatch of Picard I'm like, oh, like here I'm picking up on all these things that I might have forgotten about from a, this is kind of a throwaway episode of TNG. But I also like the idea that they had some decent science behind it too. Like, if you're going to terraform a planet, this is probably in the realm of scientifically possible and probably has something to do with what we're looking at with actually terraforming in real life. I love the idea that they're holding true to we make sure there's absolutely no life or chance of life forming. You know, they're painting the Federation the best possible light, and then just the horrible guilt that everybody feels. It's like, okay, these are good people. And the Project Genesis people were, I mean, quite frankly, they weren't really bothered by the fact that, they didn't look for inorganic life. They didn't look for any of this stuff. And, that's how all things change, right? The Federation is better now than it was then. We learned that in several TNG episodes, and I can't wait for those upcoming, because I think there's a lot that they say about humanity of the future, but of the past. They do a lot of cool things. This episode, though, is a little clunky. Like, there are a lot of things that, I don't know, it was like that murder mystery bit, where it's just like, this is kind of a whodunit with weird science attached to it. And I'm like, it just feels a little goofy. Like, at Data having to dodge, a laser beam, and then rather than just break the laser off, he has to actually, like, completely smash the thing apart. Like, what did you do to the laser? Like, I had to. I had no other choice. Like, what are you talking about? You had no other choice. All you had to do was reach up and go, and then it's done. So a little of that was like, it feels weird. I also think it's a little odd that, like, these inorganic creatures are able to just seamlessly, take over the computers and stuff. Like, they never really give us a good explanation as to how that's possible. Or why, and then all you have to do is turn the lights off, and then they start to die. Where are they getting light in this, like, subterranean layer of this planet, though? Like, that kind of baffled me too. Like, but aren't they in, like, a rock layer? Like, something here isn't adding up quite right. And now knowing, of course, the writing room problems, that sort of makes sense. It probably had a great explanation at one point. But in 47 minutes of TV, you can only do so much.
My sentiments exactly. The whole water and stratum and all of that. Again, you see it in Act 1. And this was sort of a Geordi Data forward episode to a degree. And we talk about when Geordi will eventually settle into the role that TNG gave him. And you can point to this episode as saying, yeah, I think people saw LeVar Burton in the engineering and so forth. And like, yeah, look at that. He cuts a good jib. Like, maybe this is our answer all along. And they also tried, after even having her disappear for a couple of episodes earlier in the run, they tried to give Deanna some more business. But this is where this could have gone off the rails very quickly for her character to sort of, Captain, they're lying. I sense fear. I sense deception. Like, a little of that goes a long way. I don't mind it in small bursts, because that's what a ship's counselor and an empath is supposed to do. But it shouldn't be a character crutch, whereas every situation you run into, she's the equivalent of poker face, the human lie detector, et cetera, et cetera. They have to be careful not to overuse that. But you could see that they were trying to give Troy some business here. They're like, okay, ship's counselor, how can she help advance the storyline? And that's, what they were doing there.
Well, and that makes me wonder too, do people not know how to read people in the future? I mean, are we just that, like, I can't tell what you're thinking. Quick, get Deanna Troi. I sense he's upset. I mean, it's just, come on. So again, I agree with your point. I think, again, they're trying to figure out what to do with her. Even looking, I was thinking about this the other day too, watching this last episode here. She gets a seat at the table on the bridge. I mean, she gets to sit right up front, and I'm trying to figure that out the whole time. Like, wait a minute, the ship's counselor is part of the senior staff and gets to sit to the left of Picard. Why? Because we don't know how to read people in the
And
future?
what other ships have that 3-chair configuration in this era too? I don't recall, and I'm just looking at the series as a whole now. I don't think like the Bozeman. Well, the Bozeman's from the past, but like the Bozeman doesn't have it. Voyager certainly didn't have a ship's counselor there. I don't know. It really makes me wonder. Like, is it because it's the Federation flagship? Is it the Galaxy class? Like, but then we look at other versions of the Enterprise that come after. Not really the same, right? So
That's a good point. It's not really a family ship going forward. I don't think the E was, right? That was the whole idea of the D, wasn't it? It was supposed to be the ship that explores, but you get to bring your family with.
yep.
And that I thought that was kind of the need for the counselor, not that one of the greatest captains in Starfleet doesn't know if someone is giving him a line of baloney or not.
And are there other counselors on the ship? Do they sit in the seat like when the night crew comes on, or like when the lower decks crew? What happens when the lower decks need a counselor? Do they go see Deanna Troy, or do they go see like Greg in it from accounting? Like
You know what they could have done, and here we sit in 2025 with the ability to look back. If Deanna, her character had been conceived of way back when as like the chief diplomat, the chief ambassador, like the person who always beams down and has to do the contact with the alien races, with the Riker, with Picard, like what if that had been sort of an additional duty, well then she's got like the heft of I need to be involved in all the missions because I'm the spokesman for the Federation and so forth like that. And you remember all the ambassadors and all of those guys at the Enterprise and the TOS would bring on board. You would eliminate the need for that, and you would just have a posted diplomatic ambassador right there on the ship. Like, I know that sounds small and so forth, and not every
I love
episode,
that idea.
but
I love that idea.
but I'm saying yes. Then you could have given her both sort of a political side, in certain episodes, and like Captain, we've offended them, like that's not their custom. I don't know. Like I say, it's obviously that's not the way that they went, but that's one small solution that could have given her additional grounding as a character, and on top of just being former love interest of Riker, current love interest of Riker, etc.
Slash eye candy for the audience.
Why take it's like they took the communications person away and put the counselor in that spot.
Right.
Right.
Why not have her be the communications officer?
Right, she could have been Uhura.
I wonder what the thought process was there. But I like that idea of her almost being like a diplomatic liaison. It might even have caused some tension between her and Picard at different times because their objectives or their views on things might not always be similar. Maybe almost like giving her a little boost of power. But then I'm telling you right now, I don't know if Sirtis would have been good for that type of role. Maybe Denise Crosby would have been better in that role if that was something like that.
And that's where like Denise Crosby's character again doesn't make sense. And it's like Tasha Yar as a character is just doomed from the start. And I feel bad because I like Denise Crosby as an actress. And I know I talk a lot of trash about Tasha Yar, but I feel bad for Denise Crosby. Like, I would have liked it had they done more with her clone character, which we will see in a future episode, than the original Tasha Yar. Like, they could have made her, like, central to the party and given her some, like, horrible, I mean, not that her death wasn't supposed to be tragic. Like, obviously it impacts the crew, but, I mean, more than just some, black tar monster on a weird planet. Like, the Romulans, like, I don't know, kidnap her, and then there's a rescue mission, and she's, violated and beaten, and like they're just torturing her, and then eventually they murder her, and the whole crew sees it happen, and there's this big tussle, and they barely make it out. That's a great story. That gives that character an amazing, sad but amazing conclusion, and then to find out that like, years later they ended up cloning her, that like adds this like anti-Romulan edge. And then the whole, like, we have to save the Romulans thing would be so much more impactful in the future. Because it's like, wow, they really have, like, let bygones be bygones. They've really given up this like long bias against this alien race to save them, but they don't. They don't. And then you got cheerleader outfit Marina Sirtis, which I still love the cheerleader outfit. Don't get me wrong, but obviously, and I know it's the '80s, the late '80s. You know, there are a lot of powerful women characters on TV by this time. And we've had all the 70s golden era amazing women on television. Seems like a bit of a backstep to give us, and I'm not making light of her because she's gorgeous, but like it seems a bit like eye candy for the audience. Like you really have to kind of figure out what is her place. Is she more than just something pretty for Riker to Riker? And she, of course, does become this amazing, integral part of the crew later on. But it's episodes like this where it's like, geez, they could have given her the day off. But anyway, we could go on that tangent for a long time. Gentlemen, I'm curious to know, for Home Soil, what kind of warp core ratings are you giving this episode? Because we talked a lot of smack about it, to be honest. But is it as bad as it may have sounded? Lord Uther, kick us off.
Yes, it was bad. Gosh. I mean, it's not alternative factor bad. Yeah.
That's fun.
4 is probably pushing it, but you know, you guys kind of talked me into it a little bit. I'll buy the line of, and I one of us brought this up. I think that we're seeing the beginnings of Geordi the engineer, so that might be the pivotal part of this episode. And maybe even a little bit more of the bonding with Data. So I will give it a 4 just for that. I was originally thinking 3 or 3.5, but maybe it wasn't that awful. So I'll go 4. Urza?
I was thinking 3.5 at first as well. I'm also going to go 4 because I do think there's something to be said that this brings the whole crew into the episode. Maybe not as successful as future episodes are. But you even get like Dr. Crusher in on this one. You get Wesley, which I really wish there would have been a Shut Up Wesley here because I would have loved it. And you get Geordi like kind of showing some of that engineer skill. Data doing like everything but Deus Ex Machina or Data's Ex Machina. And it ends up being a resolution that's unexpected. Like, even when I was rewatching it, I'm like, geez, I'm surprised it works out the way it does. You know, I'm surprised there wasn't more like the Farpoint situation where they were fully aware of these aliens, but they were pushing ahead anyway because they didn't understand them, or they're inorganic, or they've been killing the guys terraforming the place. That, I think, could have been a little better, but they already did it in Farpoint, so it would have been disappointing. So the fact that they didn't rehash a story from within the same season like TOS did a couple of times, I like that better. So I'm going to stick with my 4. I wanted to give it a 3.5. I still sort of do, but I'm going to give it 4 because it didn't rehash a story within the same season. Fert Derby, wrap us up.
Gentlemen, if I have to poop in the Romulan ale, then I will. This one was an ugly bag of mostly water. For me, it was a 3. And I mean, let's be frank here. I mean, I think truly terrible are 0, 1s, and 2s. 3 is not without some small degree of merit. 4 is pretty much your baseline. 5, 6s, and 7s are, of course, they tried a little harder. I think some of the disjointed feel of what we were going for. Is it murder mystery? Is it new civilization? Is it Project Genesis rehash in everything but name? I think that probably shows a little behind the scenes. They did the best with what they could, and like you say, Devil in the Dark is a prime inspiration. But Devil in the Dark had the Horta, and this one has little tiny light bulbs for a while, and then we finally start to get the crystalline. So we are getting tropey already, is that we have a crystalline entity, which we just, matched wits with in a different sense in data lore. So let's just call it a spade. Even 3 Star Trek Next Generations, it's okay. but they will hit better. They will get better as they go along, as we've mentioned countless times. And this one just had sort of a episode 17 of a 26 episode first season kind of feel. Like, here's this week's installment. We'll see you next time on Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Very apt. Very apt. I almost want to revise down to 3.5, but I'm going to stick with my 4. But it's very good. Very good. All right, gentlemen. Let us suspend TNG for a time, but we'll be back to make it so soon. For now, we voyage back to strange new worlds in our next episode. We can't wait to see all of you there. And if you want to see us there, or even if you just want to have us on in the background and listen to us, check us out by subscribing now to Pending Rebrand, the Warp Core podcast, and all our other great shows and content here on YouTube. Make sure to hit that like button and drop us a comment. What did you think about Home Soil? Make it so.